The blood-red sunset cast long shadows over the dusty plains of Kearney, Nebraska, when Katherine Rose collapsed against the weathered barn door, her trembling fingers fumbling with the rusty latch as thunder rumbled ominously in the distance. The year was 1878, and she had lost everything: her family, her home, and now, it seemed, her last chance at shelter before the storm broke. Katherine had been traveling for days, her funds depleted and her hope dwindling with each passing mile. The death of her father 3 weeks prior had left her with nothing but debts and hungry creditors circling what remained of their modest Kansas homestead. With no siblings and her mother long deceased, she had packed what little she could carry and set out toward Nebraska, where her father once mentioned a distant cousin might be found. The cousin, as it turned out, had moved on years ago, leaving Katherine truly alone in a strange town as night approached and storm clouds gathered. The first fat raindrops began to fall as she finally worked the latch free and slipped inside the darkened barn. The scent of hay and horses filled her nostrils, and she breathed a sigh of relief at finding shelter. Katherine moved cautiously through the shadows, the occasional flash of lightning illuminating the interior, just enough for her to navigate without tripping. She found a relatively clean pile of hay in an empty stall and lowered herself onto it gratefully, pulling her worn shawl tighter around her shoulders. She had no intention of stealing, merely borrowing a dry place to sleep for the night. At first light, she would continue her journey, perhaps find work in town. At 22, Katherine was no stranger to hard work. She had managed her father's household since she was 14, and before that, had helped her mother with everything from cooking to mending to tending their small vegetable garden. The steady drumming of rain on the roof soon lulled her into an exhausted sleep, her small carpet bag clutched protectively against her chest. Hours later, Katherine startled awake to the sound of the barn door creaking open. Freezing in place, she listened to the steady footfalls of boots on packed earth, accompanied by the warm glow of a lantern moving through the darkness. "I know someone's in here," a deep voice called out, not unkindly. "Best show yourself before my shotgun gets nervous." Katherine's heart hammered against her ribs as she slowly rose from her hiding place. "Please, sir," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I meant no harm. The storm. I just needed shelter for the night." The lantern lifted higher, illuminating the face of a man perhaps 5 or 6 years her senior. His features were striking: strong jaw shadowed with stubble, keen blue eyes that assessed her quickly, and a cowboy hat pushed back on his head. Most notably, there was no shotgun in sight. "Well now," he said, lowering the lantern slightly. "You're certainly not the cattle rustler I was expecting." Katherine pushed a strand of dark hair from her face, acutely aware of her disheveled appearance. "I can leave immediately if you wish, though the rain is still quite heavy." The man studied her for a long moment, taking in her travel-worn dress, the carpetbag clutched in white-knuckled fingers, and the unmistakable fear in her eyes. "Name's Adam O'Connor," he finally said. "This is my ranch you found yourself on." "Katherine Rose," she replied with as much dignity as she could muster while standing in a pile of hay. "I apologize for the intrusion, Mr. O'Connor." A rumble of thunder shook the barn, and rain continued to pour outside, occasional gusts driving it against the wooden walls. "Can't very well send you back out in that," Adam said, gesturing toward the door. "The guest room is yours, Miss Rose, at least until the storm passes." Katherine blinked in surprise. "I couldn't possibly impose. It's not an imposition if it's offered freely," Adam interrupted, already turning to leave. "Besides, my mother would haunt me till my dying day if she knew I'd left a lady to sleep in a barn when there was a perfectly good bed in the house." Too exhausted and grateful to argue further, Katherine gathered her meager belongings and followed him out of the barn. They dashed through the rain to a modest but well-maintained two-story farmhouse, warm light glowing from several windows. Once inside, Katherine stood dripping on the entryway rug, suddenly self-conscious about the muddy state of her boots and the general disarray of her appearance after days of travel. "Let me show you to your room," Adam said, hanging his wet hat on a hook by the door. "There should be some clean linens in the chest. The washroom is down the hall if you'd like to freshen up." Katherine followed him up a narrow staircase to a small but comfortable bedroom. A quilt-covered bed stood against one wall, a chest of drawers against another, and a rocking chair sat near a window that would doubtlessly offer a view of the property come morning. "This is more than generous," Katherine said softly. "Thank you, Mr. O'Connor." "Adam," he corrected. "We're not much for formalities out here." He paused at the doorway. "Are you hungry? I could fix something simple." As if on cue, Katherine's stomach growled audibly and a blush rose to her cheeks. "I wouldn't want to trouble you further." A hint of a smile touched Adam's lips. "No trouble. Come down when you're ready." With that, he left her to settle in. Katherine set her carpetbag on the bed and took a deep breath. The room smelled of lavender and fresh air so different from the musty hay of the barn or the crowded stage coaches she'd endured for days. She found clean linens in the chest as promised and made her way to the washroom, where she gratefully washed away the grime of travel. When she descended the stairs 20 minutes later, feeling somewhat refreshed though still wearing her travel-worn dress, she found Adam in the kitchen setting a pot of stew to warm over the fire. "It's nothing fancy," he said without turning around. "Made it yesterday. Tastes better the second day anyhow." "It smells wonderful," Katherine replied honestly. The rich aroma of beef, potatoes, and herbs filled the kitchen, making her mouth water. As Adam busied himself with preparations, Katherine took in her surroundings. The house was orderly and clean, if somewhat sparse in decoration. A few framed photographs hung on the walls an older couple she assumed were his parents. A younger Adam in uniform, Confederate or Union, she couldn't tell from the sepia-toned image, and one of a group of men standing proudly beside a newly constructed barn. "Your home is lovely," she offered, feeling the need to fill the silence. "Thank you. Been working on it bit by bit since I returned from the war." He set 2 bowls on the table along with a loaf of slightly stale but serviceable bread. "It was my parents' place before." They passed within a year of each other, just after the war ended. "I'm sorry for your loss," Katherine said quietly. "My father passed recently as well." Adam nodded in acknowledgement as he ladled the steaming stew into bowls. "Is that what brings you to these parts? Family?" Katherine hesitated, then decided honesty was the least she owed this man who had offered her shelter and food. "I had hoped to find my father's cousin, but it seems he moved on years ago. Truth be told, I'm not entirely sure where I'm heading now." Adam gestured for her to sit and joined her at the table. "Kearney's a growing town. Might be opportunities there if you're looking to settle." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, Katherine trying not to devour the food too eagerly despite her hunger. It was the first hot meal she'd had in days, and easily the best stew she'd tasted in recent memory. "This is delicious," she said between bites. "You're quite the cook." A ghost of a smile touched Adam's lips. "Don't sound so surprised. A man living alone learns to feed himself properly or starves." "No wife to cook for you?" The question slipped out before Katherine could think better of it. "Forgive me, that was terribly forward. No, no wife." His tone remained even, but something in his eyes shuddered briefly. "Never found the time for courting, I suppose. The ranch keeps me busy enough." "How large is your property?" Katherine asked, grateful for the change in subject. 200 acres, give or take, mostly cattle, some horses. I've got 3 hands who help with the bigger jobs, but they have their own places in town. It must be a lot of work for one person to manage. Adam shrugged. I prefer it that way most days, quieter. As they finished their meal, Katherine offered to wash the dishes, an offer Adam accepted with a nod of thanks. They worked side by side in the kitchen, Katherine washing while Adam dried and put things away. The domesticity of the scene struck her as oddly comfortable despite the fact they were strangers. "If you don't mind me asking," Adam said as he placed the last clean bowl in a cupboard, "what skills do you have? For finding work, I mean." Katherine considered the question. "I can cook, so keep accounts. My father was ill for some time before he passed, so I managed our household affairs. I'm a quick learner, too." Adam nodded thoughtfully. "Town's getting a new hotel soon. They'll need staff. The general store might be hiring 2 owners' wife just had their 3rd child." "Thank you. I'll inquire tomorrow if the rain lets up." "And if it doesn't," Adam said, "you're welcome to stay another night. No sense rushing off unprepared." Katherine smiled gratefully. "You're very kind, Mr. O'Connor, Adam. I won't forget this." That night, as she lay in a real bed for the first time in days, Katherine stared at the ceiling, listening to the rain pattering against the window. She wondered about the solitary cowboy downstairs, about the kindness he'd shown a complete stranger, and about the brief shadow she'd seen cross his face at the mention of a wife. There was a story there, she was certain, but it wasn't her place to pry. With the comforting sound of rain as her lullaby, Katherine drifted into the most peaceful sleep she'd had since her father's passing. Morning came with surprising brightness, sunlight streaming through the curtains Katherine had forgotten to close. She rose quickly, made the bed with military precision, and changed into her second dress, nearly as worn as the first, but at least it was clean. She had just finished pinning her hair into a simple bun when a knock sounded at her door. "Breakfast in 10 minutes, Adam's voice came through the wood. "Nothing fancy, but it's hot. Thank you. I'll be right down," she replied, gathering her things. In the kitchen, Adam stood at the stove, frying bacon in a cast-iron skillet. A pot of coffee bubbled nearby, its rich aroma filling the room. A plate of biscuits already sat on the table. "Good morning," Katherine said, hovering uncertainly in the doorway. Adam glanced over his shoulder. "Morning. Sleep well. Better than I have in weeks, thank you." "Good. Help yourself to coffee if you'd like." Katherine did so, wrapping her hands around the warm mug gratefully. Through the window above the sink, she could see that the storm had indeed passed, leaving behind a freshly washed landscape. The sky was a brilliant blue, and puddles in the yard reflected the sunlight like scattered mirrors. "The rain stopped," she observed. "For now," Adam agreed, transferring the bacon to a plate. "Spring storms come and go quick around here. Could be sunny all day, could be pouring again by noon." They sat down to breakfast, and Katherine found herself studying Adam in the clear morning light. His features were more defined than she'd realized the night before. Strong nose, firm jawline covered with a day's stubble, and those striking blue eyes that seemed to notice everything. His brown hair was slightly too long, curling just above his collar, and his hands were those of a working man, calloused and strong. "I thought I might ride into town after breakfast," Adam said, interrupting her observations. "You're welcome to come along, save yourself the walk." "That would be very helpful, thank you," Katherine replied, feeling a twinge of both relief and disappointment that her time at the ranch was coming to an end. "I need to check on a feed order anyway," he continued, buttering a biscuit. "And the mercantile should be open. Mrs. Holloway, the owner's wife, I mentioned she might know of work if they're not hiring themselves. Katherine nodded. I appreciate your assistance. I'll repay your kindness somehow. Adam waved off her words. No need for that. Just helping a neighbor. I'm hardly a neighbor, Katherine pointed out. Everyone in these parts is a neighbor, whether they live next door or 20 miles away. Adam replied matter-of-factly. You learn that quick out here. After breakfast, Katherine insisted on washing the dishes again while Adam went to hitch his wagon. She worked quickly, wanting to be ready when he returned, and took one last look around the kitchen that had provided her with such unexpected comfort. Adam returned shortly, having changed into a clean shirt and his better boots. Ready? He asked, standing in the doorway with his hat already in place. Katherine nodded, picking up her carpetbag. Yes, thank you. The wagon ride to town took about 30 minutes, during which Adam pointed out various landmarks and neighboring properties. Katherine listened attentively, trying to memorize the landscape in case she needed to make her way back to town on foot in the future. That's the Wilson place, Adam said, gesturing toward a distant farmhouse. Good people. Their daughter teaches at the schoolhouse in town. He paused before adding, if you don't find work right away, they sometimes take in boarders. Katherine appreciated his thoughtfulness. Is Kearney growing quickly? You mentioned a new hotel. Railroads bringing more people through. Some stay, some move on west. He glanced at her. Where were you hoping to end up? Before your plans changed, I mean, Katherine sighed. Truthfully, I didn't have a destination in mind beyond finding my father's cousin. I just needed to leave Kansas. Adam didn't press for details, which Katherine appreciated. They rode in companionable silence, until the first buildings of Kearney came into view, a modest but bustling town that served as a hub for the surrounding farmlands. Main Street was lined with the typical establishments of a growing prairie town: general store, bank, sheriff's office, saloon, and a small hotel that had clearly seen better days. Construction on what must be the new hotel Adam mentioned was underway at the far end of the street. Adam pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the general store. I'll be about an hour taking care of my business, he said as he helped Katherine down from the wagon. That should give you time to speak with Mrs. Holloway and perhaps check at the hotel site if you're interested. Thank you again for everything, Katherine said, clutching her carpetbag. Truly, I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't found me last night. You'd have been fine, Adam replied with surprising certainty. You strike me as a resourceful woman, Miss Rose. The compliment warmed her more than it should have. Katherine, please, if I'm to call you Adam, it's only fair. He tipped his hat with a slight smile. Katherine, then, good luck with your inquiries. With that, he turned and headed toward the feed store, leaving Katherine standing in front of Holloway's General Mercantile. Taking a deep breath, she straightened her shoulders and walked inside, the small bell above the door announcing her arrival. The store was well stocked, shelves lined with everything from canned goods to fabrics to tools. A plump, friendly-faced woman stood behind the counter, rearranging a display of candy jars. She looked up at the sound of the bell and smiled warmly. Good morning. You must be new in town. I'm Martha Holloway, Katherine Rose, she replied, approaching the counter. And yes, I just arrived. Actually, Mr. O'Connor suggested I speak with you about potential work in town. Mrs. Holloway's smile widened. Adam brought you in. Well, that's a first. He hardly ever brings visitors to town. She studied Katherine with new interest. Are you staying out at his ranch? Just for the night, Katherine clarified quickly, sensing gossip in the making. I was caught in the storm yesterday and he kindly offered shelter. That sounds like Adam. Gruff as a bear sometimes, but a good heart underneath. Mrs. Holloway leaned forward conspiratorially. Been on his own too long, if you ask me. That ranch needs a woman's touch. Katherine felt her cheeks warm. About potential work. Oh, yes, Mrs. Holloway straightened. As it happens, we could use some help here 3 days a week. My husband's minding our new baby today, but we can't keep trading off like this. Can you keep accounts? Most of our customers run tabs. Yes, I managed my father's accounts for years, Katherine replied eagerly. And you can read and write, I assume? Some of our customers can't, so you need to help them with orders sometimes. Of course, Mrs. Holloway nodded approvingly. Let's give it a trial then. Starting tomorrow if you're available, 8 to 4 with a break for lunch. Pay's not extravagant, but it's fair. Relief flooded through Katherine. That sounds perfect, Mrs. Holloway. Thank you. Now, are you staying at the hotel? Because I should warn you, it's not the best accommodations until the new one opens. Katherine hesitated. I haven't arranged lodging yet. I was hoping to find work first. Mrs. Holloway's brow furrowed in concern. Well, you can't stay at Adams indefinitely, people would talk. Though the widow Jenkins takes in boarders. Clean place, reasonable rates, and only 3 blocks from here. That sounds ideal, Katherine said, though inwardly she worried about affording room and board until her first pay came. As if reading her thoughts, Mrs. Holloway added, I could advance you a week's wages if that would help. We've been needing help badly enough that I'd hate to lose you over a temporary shortage of funds. Tears of gratitude pricked at Katherine's eyes. That's extremely generous of you. Not at all. Just practical business sense, Mrs. Holloway insisted, though her kind smile suggested otherwise. Now, let me write down directions to the widow Jenkins' place for you. By the time Adam returned an hour later, Katherine was feeling considerably more optimistic about her prospects. She waited outside the general store, carpetbag at her feet, watching the town's activities with interest. Any luck? Adam asked as he approached. Katherine smiled. Yes, actually, Mrs. Holloway offered me a position starting tomorrow, 3 days a week, but it's a start. That's good news, Adam replied, and he seemed genuinely pleased for her. Did she mention the widow Jenkins for boarding? She did. I was planning to head there next to inquire about a room. Adam nodded, glancing up at the sky. More clouds rolling in. I should get back to the ranch before the rain starts again. He paused, seeming to debate something internally before continuing. Unless you'd prefer to stay another night and get settled in town tomorrow. Save you getting caught in another downpour. Katherine hesitated. The practical choice would be to establish herself in town immediately. The widow Jenkins' boarding house would be respectable accommodation, and starting fresh in the morning made sense. Yet something about the thought of one more night in that comfortable guest room, one more meal shared with the quiet cowboy who'd shown her such unexpected kindness, was strangely appealing. If it wouldn't be an imposition, she began carefully, another night would give me time to better prepare for tomorrow. Was it her imagination, or did relief flicker briefly in those blue eyes? No imposition, Adam said, picking up her carpetbag. Like I said, the guest room is yours as long as you need it. The ride back to the ranch was punctuated by conversation about Kearney and its inhabitants. Adam, though not naturally talkative, proved to be a wealth of information about the town and its people. Katherine listened attentively, grateful for any knowledge that might help her navigate her new surroundings. The Wilsons I mentioned earlier, Adam said as they turned onto the road leading to his property. Their daughter Sarah teaches at the school. Good friend of mine. If you need anything when I'm not in town, she's someone you can trust. How long have you lived here? Katherine asked. Born and raised on this ranch, Adam replied. Except for 3 years during the war. Which side? Katherine asked before she could stop herself. Union, Adam said simply. though I had friends who wore gray. War's over now. The conversation lulled as they approached the ranch, and Katherine was struck again by how beautiful the property was in daylight. The house sat on a gentle rise, with the barn and corrals to one side and open pasture land stretching beyond. A small creek wound through the property, lined with cottonwoods that would provide welcome shade in the summer months. "It's lovely," she said softly. "It's home," Adam replied, his tone equally soft. "Been in my family for 2 generations. Hope to keep it for many more." As they pulled up to the house, fat raindrops began to fall, and they hurried inside just as the skies opened up again. "You have a knack for arriving with the rain," Adam observed with a hint of a smile as they shook water from their coats in the entryway. "Perhaps I should consider a career as a rainmaker instead of a shopkeeper," Katherine replied lightly. This earned her a genuine laugh from Adam, the first she'd heard, and the sound warmed something inside her. She found herself wanting to hear it again. The afternoon passed quietly, with Adam attending to paperwork at the kitchen table while Katherine, wanting to be useful, took inventory of his pantry and began preparations for dinner. It felt oddly domestic, the two of them working in companionable silence in the same space. "You don't have to cook," Adam said when he realized what she was doing. "I'd like to," Katherine replied. "Consider it a small thank you for your hospitality." Adam didn't argue further, and by the time evening arrived, the kitchen was filled with the aroma of chicken and dumplings, a recipe Katherine's mother had taught her years ago. The rain continued outside, drumming steadily on the roof, making the warmth of the kitchen feel all the more inviting. They ate by lamplight, the simple meal tasting all the better for the company. Katherine found herself watching Adam when he wasn't looking, noticing the way his expression softened when he spoke of his ranch, the careful way he handled his mother's china plates, the strength in his hands that nonetheless managed such gentleness. "This is delicious," Adam said, breaking a brief silence. "Best meal I've had in this house in a long time." "You always eat alone?" Katherine asked. Adam shrugged. "Most nights. The hands join me sometimes when we're working late. Sarah Wilson comes by with her parents on holidays." He glanced up at her. "It's not as lonely as it sounds." But Katherine thought perhaps it was exactly as lonely as it sounded, and wondered why a man like Adam, hardworking, kind, not unattractive, remained so solitary. After dinner, they sat in the small parlor, the rain still falling steadily outside. Adam had built a fire to ward off the evening chill, and Katherine sat in an armchair across from him, mending a tear she'd noticed in her other dress. "What will you do if the work at Holloway's isn't enough?" Adam asked suddenly, Katherine's hand stilled. "I'm not entirely sure. I can sew, so perhaps I could take in mending, or maybe the hotel will need help once it's completed." Adam nodded. "Resourceful, like I said. Necessity breeds resourcefulness," Katherine replied with a small smile. "When there are no other options, you find a way forward." "Is that what happened in Kansas?" "No other options," Katherine sighed, setting her sewing in her lap. "My father made some poor investments before he fell ill. By the time he passed, there was nothing left but debts. The bank took our home, and the creditors would have taken everything else if I'd stayed." "I'm sorry," Adam said quietly. "Losing a home and a father in one blow, that's a heavy burden." "What about your parents?" Katherine asked, sensing he might understand her loss. "You said they passed after the war." Adam's gaze turned toward the fire. "Mother first, consumption. Father followed 8 months later. Doctor called it heart failure, but I think it was grief as much as anything." He paused. "They were devoted to each other for 30 years. I don't think he knew how to live without her." "That kind of love is rare," Katherine observed softly. "And double-edged," Adam replied. Beautiful while it lasts, devastating when it ends. He looked at her directly then. Is that why you never married? Seeing that kind of devotion and not finding it, Katherine blinked in surprise. I'm only 22, she said with a slight laugh. And there weren't many prospects in our small corner of Kansas, especially once Father's financial troubles became known. You're young yet, Adam agreed with a nod. Plenty of time. And you, Katherine asked, bold in the firelight's glow. You never answered properly yesterday. No time for courting, you said, but is that the whole truth? A shadow passed over Adam's face, and for a moment Katherine thought she'd overstepped. Then he sighed deeply. There was someone once, before the war, we had plans. His voice grew distant. I enlisted, promised to return and marry her. She promised to wait. A bitter smile touched his lips. She married a cotton merchant 3 months after I left. Probably for the best. I came back different than I left. War changes a man. I'm sorry, Katherine said, and meant it. Her loss, if I may say so. Adam's expression softened slightly. Kind of you to say, though you've known me less than 2 days. Sometimes that's long enough to take the measure of a person, Katherine replied. You offered shelter to a stranger during a storm with no expectation of repayment. That speaks to your character. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the steady rhythm of the rain. Katherine returned to her mending, and Adam picked up a book, though she noticed he turned pages infrequently, as if his thoughts were elsewhere. Later, as Katherine prepared to retire for the night, she paused at the foot of the stairs. Thank you again for letting me stay another night. It is appreciated. Adam looked up from banking the fire. You're welcome, Katherine. Sleep well. As she climbed the stairs, Katherine realized she was in no hurry for morning to come. The next day dawned clear and bright, perfect weather for Katherine's first day of work. She rose early, dressed in her freshly mended dress, and went downstairs to find Adam already in the kitchen, coffee brewing and bacon frying. Good morning, he said, glancing up as she entered. Thought you might want an early start for your first day. Thank you, Katherine replied, touched by his thoughtfulness. That's very kind. They ate breakfast quickly, neither mentioning that this would be their last meal together. When they finished, Katherine gathered her belongings while Adam readied the wagon. The ride to town was quieter than the previous day, a certain weight settling between them that hadn't been there before. Katherine found herself memorizing the landscape more carefully this time, noting the turn to Adam's ranch, the way the morning light played across the rolling hills. I'll take you directly to the Widow Jenkins' place first, Adam said as they approached town. Get you settled before work. The boarding house proved to be a neat 2-story home on a quiet side street. The Widow Jenkins herself was a sprightly woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner that Katherine immediately respected. Room and board is payable weekly in advance, she informed Katherine after showing her a small but clean room on the 2nd floor. Breakfast at 6, dinner at 6. You're on your own for midday meal. No gentlemen callers in rooms, no alcohol, no coming in after 9 without prior arrangement. That all sounds perfectly reasonable, Katherine assured her, after paying for her first week with the advance misses. Holloway had provided. Katherine turned to Adam, who had waited patiently in the parlor. Thank you for bringing me. I should head to the store now. Adam nodded, walking with her to the wagon to retrieve her carpet bag. I'll be in town again on Saturday for supplies, he said, handing it to her. If you need anything before then, the Wilsons can help. Their place is just down this street, the blue house with the white trim. I appreciate that, Katherine said, suddenly reluctant to say goodbye, and everything else. Adam shifted uncomfortably. It was nothing. Anyone would have done the same. "No," Katherine said firmly, "not anyone. You're a good man, Adam O'Connor." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Katherine felt something pass between them, unspoken but tangible nonetheless. "Good luck today," he finally said. "You'll do fine." With that, he climbed back into his wagon and drove away, leaving Katherine standing in front of her new temporary home with the distinct feeling that something important had just slipped through her fingers. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of activity as Katherine settled into life in Kearney. Her position at Holloway's proved to be a good fit. She had a head for numbers and a pleasant manner with customers that quickly made her an asset to the store. Mrs. Holloway was delighted and soon increased her hours to 5 days a week. The Widow Jenkins boarding house, while strict in its rules, provided comfortable accommodation and hearty meals. Katherine's fellow boarders included the town's telegraph operator, a young schoolteacher, and an elderly gentleman who had once prospected for gold and never tired of telling stories about his adventures. She made acquaintances easily enough, but friendship was slower to develop. Sarah Wilson, Adam's friend, made a point of introducing herself one afternoon in the store and invited Katherine to Sunday dinner with her family. Katherine accepted gratefully and found the Wilsons to be warm, welcoming people who treated her more like a long-lost relative than a newcomer. Throughout those weeks, Katherine saw Adam only twice, once when he came to town for supplies as promised, and again at church the following Sunday. Both encounters were brief and strangely formal, as if the easy companionship they had shared during her short stay at his ranch had been imagined. On the first occasion, he had inquired politely about her work and lodgings, purchased his supplies efficiently, and departed with nothing more than a tip of his hat. The second time, he had sat with the Wilsons during the service, exchanged pleasantries with her afterward, and then excused himself to attend to ranch business. Katherine told herself it didn't matter that Adam O'Connor was simply a kind stranger who had helped her when she needed it. Nothing more. She had a job now, a place to stay, and was slowly building a life for herself in Kearney. That should be enough. Yet she found her thoughts drifting to him, often wondering what he was doing, if he was eating properly, whether he missed having someone to talk to in the evenings as much as she missed their conversations by the fire. "He asks about you, you know," Sarah Wilson commented one afternoon as they walked home from a quilting circle. "Adam, I mean, whenever I see him." Katherine's heart skipped a beat, but she kept her expression neutral. "Does he? I'm surprised he remembers me at all, given how briefly we were acquainted." Sarah gave her a knowing look. "Adam doesn't forget people easily, especially ones who make an impression, and you clearly did." "We barely know each other," Katherine protested. "Sometimes that doesn't matter," Sarah replied with a shrug. "Some connections form quickly." Katherine changed the subject, unwilling to examine too closely the warmth that spread through her at Sarah's words. It was foolish to dwell on a man who had shown no particular interest beyond common courtesy. It was early June when Katherine received word that the new hotel was hiring staff in preparation for its grand opening in July. The position of head housekeeper offered better pay and more regular hours than her current work, and Mrs. Holloway, while sad to lose her, encouraged Katherine to apply. "You're meant for more than stocking shelves, dear," she said kindly. "And the hotel would be lucky to have someone as organized as you managing things." The hotel owner, Mr. Fredericks, was a businesslike man from Chicago who had recognized Kearney's potential as a stopping point for travelers heading west. He interviewed Katherine briefly, reviewed the reference Mrs. Holloway had provided, and offered her the position on the spot. "You'll start Monday next," he said briskly. "There's a small apartment included with the position, just a bedroom and sitting room above the kitchen, but it's private. You'll be expected to be on premises most evenings in case of late arrivals or emergencies. Katherine accepted gratefully, pleased at both the advancement and the prospect of her own private lodgings after weeks in the boarding house. The widow Jenkins expressed genuine regret at losing her as a boarder but wished her well. "You're a sensible girl," she said approvingly. "Head on your shoulders, unlike some who pass through here." Katherine spent her final days at Holloway's training her replacement, a young widow with 2 children who needed the flexible schedule the store offered. On her last day, Mrs. Holloway presented her with a new shawl as a parting gift. "For those cool evenings at the hotel," she said with a wink. "You never know who might come calling once you're settled in your new position." Katherine thanked her sincerely, though she had no expectation of callers. Her life was focused on building financial security first. Matters of the heart would have to wait. The following Monday, Katherine moved into her new quarters at the Kearney Grand Hotel. The rooms were indeed small but clean and well appointed, with a window that overlooked the town square. More importantly, they were hers alone, the first private space she'd had since leaving Kansas. Her duties kept her busy from dawn until dusk as she hired and trained a staff of 6 chambermaids, established cleaning routines, and organized the linen supply. Mr. Fredericks proved to be a demanding but fair employer who recognized Katherine's efficiency and delegated increasing responsibility to her. 2 weeks after starting her new position, Katherine was reviewing inventory in her small office when one of the front desk clerks appeared at her door. "Miss Rose, there's a gentleman asking for you in the lobby." Puzzled, Katherine set down her ledger and followed the clerk. The hotel was not yet open to guests, though they were conducting trial runs with invited visitors to ensure all systems worked smoothly before the official opening. She entered the lobby to find Adam O'Connor standing awkwardly by the front desk, hat in hand. He was dressed in his better clothes, the ones she'd seen him wear to church, and his hair was neatly combed. "Adam," she said, unable to keep the surprise from her voice, "is everything all right?" "Everything's fine," he assured her quickly. "I just heard about your new position, wanted to congratulate you." "Oh," Katherine smiled, genuinely touched. "Thank you. Would you like a tour? We're not officially open yet, but I could show you around." Adam nodded. "I'd like that." Katherine led him through the hotel, showing him the dining room with its polished tables and crystal chandeliers, the reading room stocked with newspapers and novels, and the spacious guest rooms on the upper floors. Adam followed quietly, asking occasional questions but mostly just listening as Katherine explained her role in the operation. "It's impressive," he said as they concluded the tour in the lobby. "You seem to have found your place here." "I think I have," Katherine agreed. "It's challenging work but satisfying." She hesitated before adding, "How have you been? I haven't seen you in town much." "Busy season at the ranch," Adam replied. "Calving time, then branding. Doesn't leave much time for social calls." "Of course," Katherine said, though she wondered if that was the whole truth. "Will you be attending the hotel's opening celebration next week? Mr. Fredericks has invited the whole town for the ribbon cutting." Adam shifted uncomfortably. "Not much for large gatherings, to be honest." "No, I suppose you wouldn't be," Katherine said, remembering his preference for solitude. "Still, it would be nice to see a friendly face there." Adam looked at her for a long moment, his blue eyes searching hers. "You've made other friends in town by now, surely." "Some acquaintances," Katherine acknowledged. "The Wilsons have been kind. But—" She trailed off, unsure how to express that none of her new relationships held the same easy comfort she'd felt during those 2 days at his ranch. "I should let you get back to work," Adam said, putting his hat back on. "Just wanted to say congratulations in person." "Thank you for coming," Katherine replied, walking him to the door. It was good to see you. Adam paused at the threshold, seeming to struggle with something. Finally, he said, Katherine, Yes, she prompted. When he didn't continue, he shook his head slightly. Nothing. Good day. As she watched him walk away, Katherine felt a familiar sense of something important slipping through her fingers once again. The hotel's grand opening proved to be the social event of the season for Kearney. Everyone from the mayor to the local shopkeepers attended, dressed in their finest clothes and eager to inspect the new establishment that promised to bring increased business to their growing town. Katherine, dressed in a new navy blue dress she had purchased with her first month's wages, stood alongside Mr. Fredericks as he cut the ribbon across the main entrance. Her staff performed admirably, serving refreshments and conducting tours for the curious townspeople. As the celebration continued into the evening, Katherine found herself constantly scanning the crowd, hoping for a glimpse of a certain tall cowboy. But Adam didn't appear, and she tried to tell herself she wasn't disappointed. "He's not coming," Sarah Wilson said, appearing at Katherine's elbow with a knowing look. "Adam, I mean." Katherine blushed, embarrassed at being so transparent. "I didn't expect him to. He mentioned he doesn't care for crowds." Sarah nodded. "That's part of it, but not all." She studied Katherine thoughtfully. "Have you ever wondered why he lives alone out there? A man in his prime with a successful ranch." "It's not my place to wonder," Katherine replied primly, though of course she had. "He was engaged once before the war," Sarah said, confirming what Adam had briefly told Katherine. Elizabeth was her name, pretty girl, daughter of the bank manager. When Adam enlisted, she promised to wait for him. "But she didn't," Katherine finished softly. "He told me she married someone else." Sarah looked surprised. "He told you that?" "Adam never talks about Elizabeth to anyone." She shook her head. "Well, there's more to it. When he came back from the war, he was different, quieter. His parents died soon after and he just withdrew. Focuses on the ranch, helps neighbors when needed, comes to church, but keeps to himself otherwise." "Why are you telling me this?" Katherine asked, though she thought she knew. Sarah smiled gently. "Because in the 10 years I've known Adam O'Connor, you're the first woman he's gone out of his way to see. And I think you should know that means something, even if he's too stubborn or scared to admit it." Katherine didn't know how to respond. The idea that Adam might harbor feelings for her seemed simultaneously absurd and thrilling. "Just something to consider," Sarah said, patting Katherine's arm before moving away to rejoin her parents. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur as Katherine went through the motions of her duties, her mind occupied with thoughts of Adam. By the time the last guests departed and the staff finished cleaning up, it was well past midnight. Katherine climbed the stairs to her rooms exhausted but unable to quiet her racing thoughts. The next morning, Katherine woke to a knock on her door. Bleary-eyed from too little sleep, she pulled on a robe and opened it to find one of the chambermaids looking apologetic. "Sorry to disturb you, Miss Rose, but there's a delivery for you downstairs. The boy says it can't wait." Puzzled, Katherine quickly dressed and made her way downstairs, where she found a young boy of about 12 shifting from foot to foot impatiently. "Are you Miss Rose?" he asked as soon as he spotted her. "I am," she confirmed. The boy thrust a small package wrapped in brown paper into her hands. "Mr. O'Connor said to give you this and wait for an answer." Katherine's heart skipped a beat as she unwrapped the package. Inside was a small wooden box, carved with delicate flowers around the edges. When she opened it, she found a folded note atop a bed of cotton. The note, written in a strong, masculine hand, read simply, "Katherine, I'm no good with words, but maybe this will say what I can't. If it doesn't, please just give the boy a no and I won't trouble you again. If it does, tell him yes and I'll be waiting. Adam." Beneath the cotton lay a simple silver pendant on a chain, nothing elaborate or expensive, but beautiful in its simplicity. It was shaped like a small barn door, partially open to reveal a tiny star inside. Katherine stared at it, understanding washing over her. The barn where they'd first met, the shelter she'd sought, the door he'd opened for her, not just to his home but to a new beginning. "Miss," the boy prompted. "Mr. O'Connor said it's important I bring back your answer right away." Katherine closed the box carefully and looked at the boy. "The answer is yes," she said, her voice steady despite the trembling of her hands. "Tell him I'll be there at noon." The boy grinned, clearly relieved his mission was successful, and dashed off without another word. Katherine returned to her rooms in a daze, the wooden box clutched tightly in her hand. She had responsibilities at the hotel, guests checking in that day, staff to supervise. But for once in her life, Katherine Rose decided that something else might be more important. After arranging for her assistant to cover her duties for the afternoon, Katherine changed into her best day dress, a pale blue cotton that Sarah had once mentioned brought out the color of her eyes, and fastened the silver pendant around her neck. It rested just below her collarbone, catching the light when she moved. At precisely 11:30, she left the hotel and began walking toward the edge of town where she knew Adam would be waiting. She could have asked for a ride, but the walk gave her time to gather her thoughts and calm her racing heart. The day was warm but pleasant, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of wildflowers from the surrounding prairie. Katherine followed the main road out of town, her steps quickening as she spotted a familiar figure in the distance. Adam stood beside his wagon at the crossroads where the town road met the trail to his ranch. When he saw her approaching, he straightened, removing his hat as she drew near. His expression was a mixture of hope and apprehension that made her heart swell. "You came," he said simply when she reached him. "Of course I came," Katherine replied. "Your note was very convincing." Adam's eyes dropped to the pendant at her throat and a smile tugged at his lips. "It suits you." "It's beautiful," Katherine said, "and meaningful, thank you." An awkward silence fell between them, both having so much to say but uncertain where to begin. Finally, Adam took a deep breath. "I'm not good at this," he said. "Never have been. But I need to tell you that these past weeks since you left the ranch have been empty somehow. I kept telling myself it was foolish to feel that way about someone I barely knew, but sometimes connections form quickly," Katherine finished for him, echoing Sarah's words. Adam nodded. "Exactly that. I can't explain it, but there was something about those 2 days sitting across from you at my table, talking by the fire, that felt right in a way nothing has for a very long time." Katherine took a step closer to him. "I felt it too," she admitted. "I've thought about you every day since I left." "I should have come to town sooner," Adam said regretfully. "Pride and fear kept me away. I convinced myself you'd moved on, found your place here without a second thought for the ranch or me." "Never," Katherine said softly. "I've been building a life here, yes, but something was missing. Someone." Adam reached out hesitantly and took her hand. His palm was warm and calloused against her skin. "I don't have much to offer beyond what you've already seen. The ranch is my life, it's hard work and long days. I'm not a wealthy man, not the type to take a wife to fancy restaurants or buy her silk dresses." "I've never wanted silk dresses," Katherine replied. "Just a home, security, someone to share quiet evenings with." "I can offer you that," Adam said, his voice growing stronger. "A home that would be yours as much as mine. Security as long as there's breath in my body. And every evening for the rest of our lives if you want them." Katherine's breath caught in her throat. "Adam O'Connor, are you proposing to me at a dusty crossroads less than a month after we met?" A grin spread across his face, that rare, genuine smile she'd glimpsed only a few times before. "I believe I am. Is it too soon? Too strange? We barely know each other, and yet I feel like I've known you forever," Katherine finished. "Like finding something I didn't even know I was looking for." Adam stepped closer, still holding her hand. "Katherine Rose, I love you. I think I started falling the moment I found you in my barn and realized you weren't a cattle rustler after all. Will you marry me? Come live at the ranch, help me make it a home again." Instead of answering immediately, Katherine reached up with her free hand and touched his cheek gently. "The people in town will think we're mad. They'll gossip." "Let them," Adam said, leaning slightly into her touch. "What matters is what's true between us." "And what if it doesn't work?" Katherine asked, voicing her deepest fear. "What if this connection is just temporary madness?" Adam considered this seriously. "Then we'll have tried something brave and true, and we'll face whatever comes next with the same honesty we're showing now." He smiled slightly. "But I don't think that will happen. Some things you just know deep down. And I know that I love you, Katherine. I know that I want to build a life with you." Katherine looked into his eyes, those blue eyes that had haunted her dreams for weeks, and saw nothing but sincerity and love reflected there. In that moment, all her doubts fell away. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I'll marry you, Adam O'Connor." The joy that transformed his face was answer enough to any lingering uncertainty. Adam pulled her gently into his arms and kissed her a first kiss full of promise and tenderness that left her breathless. "When?" he asked when they finally parted. "How soon can you be ready?" Katherine laughed, giddy with happiness. "I need to give notice at the hotel. 2 weeks, perhaps. Nothing elaborate, just us and a few friends at the church." "2 weeks sounds like an eternity," Adam said, smiling. "But I've waited this long. I suppose I can manage a little longer." They climbed into the wagon together, and as Adam turned the horses toward town to help Katherine gather her things and break the news to Mr. Fredericks, she leaned against his shoulder contentedly. "You know what convinced me?" she asked. "Even more than the pendant." "What's that?" "The guest room," Katherine said with a smile. "When you found me sleeping in your barn for shelter, you didn't just offer me temporary refuge. You said the guest room is yours, like you were offering me a place that could be mine, not just a space I was borrowing." Adam's arm tightened around her shoulders. "I meant it then, and I mean it even more now. Everything I have is yours, Katherine, from this day forward." 2 weeks later, on a perfect summer morning, Katherine Rose became Katherine O'Connor in a simple ceremony at Kearney's small church. Sarah Wilson stood beside her as maid of honor, while Sarah's father stood with Adam. The widow Jenkins cried unashamedly in the front pew, and Mrs. Holloway beamed approval from the second row. Katherine wore a new dress of cream-colored silk, her one concession to bridal tradition, with the silver pendant Adam had given her resting at her throat. When they exchanged vows, her voice was clear and certain, matching the steady confidence in Adam's as he promised to love and cherish her for all their days. The wedding breakfast that followed at the Wilson home was a joyful affair, with enough food to feed half the town and music provided by local fiddle players. As the celebration continued, Adam pulled Katherine aside to a quiet corner of the garden. "Happy?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist. "Completely," she replied, leaning into his embrace, "though I must admit I'm looking forward to going home." Adam's smile was tender as he bent to kiss her. "Home," he repeated. "I like the sound of that." That evening, as the sun set over the Nebraska plains, Adam drove his wagon, now loaded with Katherine's belongings, up the familiar road to the ranch. When they reached the house, he surprised her by lifting her into his arms to carry her across the threshold. "Welcome home, Mrs. O'Connor," he said softly as he set her down in the entryway. Katherine looked around at the house that had offered her shelter during a storm and was now her home. "It feels right," she said, "like I've been making my way here all along." "You have been," Adam replied, taking her hand. "And now you're home for good." In the years that followed, the O'Connor Ranch flourished under their combined care. Katherine's organizational skills and head for business complemented Adam's ranching knowledge, allowing them to expand their operations and increase their herd. The house, too, changed under Katherine's influence, not drastically, but in small ways that made it warmer, more inviting, more truly a home. Their first child, a son they named James after Adam's father, arrived a year after their wedding. He was followed 2 years later by a daughter, Elizabeth, named in a gesture of healing for the woman who had once broken Adam's heart. A third child, another boy they called William, completed their family 3 years after that. Life wasn't always easy. There were droughts that threatened the herd, economic downturns that strained their finances, and the normal challenges of raising 3 spirited children on a working ranch. But through it all, Adam and Katherine faced each day together, their bond strengthening with each obstacle overcome. On the 5th anniversary of the day Adam had found Katherine sleeping in his barn, he presented her with a small, carved wooden barn of her own, a replica of the one on their property, complete with tiny doors that opened to reveal miniature figures representing their family. "To remind us where it all began," he said as she admired the intricate craftsmanship, "and how far we've come since." Katherine placed the carving on the mantel beside their wedding photograph. "I never imagined when I sought shelter that night that I was actually finding my way home," she said. "That the cowboy who offered me his guest room would end up offering me his heart as well." Adam drew her close, his arms as strong and steady as they had been the first time he held her. "Best decision I ever made," he murmured against her hair. "Turns out that guest room was always meant to be yours, just like this ranch, this life. Just like my heart." Outside, a gentle rain began to fall, reminiscent of the storm that had brought them together. But this time, instead of seeking shelter, Katherine and Adam stood together at the window, watching the life-giving moisture nourish their land, secure in the knowledge that whatever storms might come, they would weather them together. Years later, when their children were grown and beginning families of their own, visitors to the O'Connor Ranch often remarked on the unusual silver pendant Katherine still wore every day, a small barn door, partially open to reveal a star within. Few knew the story behind it, how a desperate young woman seeking temporary shelter had found a permanent home, or how a solitary cowboy's simple act of kindness had led to a lifetime of love. But Adam and Katherine knew. And on quiet evenings, as they sat together on the porch watching the sun set over land that had nurtured both their family and their love for decades, they would sometimes share a private smile, remembering a stormy night, a barn, and the words that had changed everything. "The guest room is yours."